India got their independence in 1947 from the Britishers. On the other hand, after 9 years on 1st January 1956, Sudan also got independence from Britain and Egypt. But here comes a twist. Today India look like this. And on the other hand, Sudan look like this. There were no huge time difference of independence between both the countries, then how Sudan is in the civil war.
Now to the war that the world has forgotten about. Sudan. It's been at war for 10 months, suffering a monumental humanitarian crisis. But Western powers or interests are not involved, so the world doesn't care very much. Sudan's story is getting worse by the day. Experts say the war is reaching a breaking point.
Hundreds of civilians have been killed during 2 months of fighting. Nearly 2 million people have fled their homes, and hundreds of thousands of people have escaped to neighboring countries like Egypt, Chad, Ethiopia, and South Sudan.
Since April, when we focused so intensely on the evacuation of the expat community, things have gone from bad to worse. The fighting is led by two men.
Now, both these generals used to be allies. They worked together to orchestrate a coup in 2021.
Sudan before its division in 2011 was Africa's largest country, marked by a diverse population with over 500 ethnic groups speaking numerous languages. Its modern history of conflict can be tracked back to the colonial era when Britain and Egypt co-ruled the country from 1899 to 1956. The colonial powers largely developed the northern part, leaving the south behind. Shortly before Sudan gained independence in 1956, conflict erupted between the northern government and southern rebels, primarily over issues of governance, development, and the south's demand for autonomy. This war lasted until 1972, ending with the Addis Ababa Agreement, which granted the southern region a degree of self-government. Despite the temporary peace, tensions rise due to the central government's attempt to impose Islamic law across Sudan, including the predominantly Christian and South. In 1983, conflict reignited, leading to a devastating civil war that lasted over 2 bloody decades. The war was marked by widespread atrocities including mass killings, enslavement and famine, resulting in millions of deaths and displacements. While the North-South conflict was the most prolonged, another significant conflict emerged in the western region of Sudan in 2003. But this whole conflict started because of one man known as Omar al-Bashir. He's a Sudanese army head who took over the government and did a military coup in the late 80s, dissolved the parliament, banned the political parties and created their own forces and the army to be in protection amongst the outsiders. Slowly he became a military dictator. In the west he created his own military force, which was led by a commander known as Hemeti. Well, Hemeti controls RSF, Rapid Support Force. It's not just a force, it's a business empire that controls all types of legal and corporate documents related to the oil business, guns trade, coal mines, smuggling, training and hiring of fighters securing the border. This made a Hemeti super rich in Sudan, which mostly earns from coal trading. The comprehensive peace agreement signed in 2005 led to the end of the Second Civil War in Darfur of West Sudan and set the stage for a referendum for South Sudan. In 2011, South Sudan became an independent country, but South Sudan takes away the 75% of the oil reserves, a major blow to Sudan's economy. Where inflation goes high, there is no money to purchase food, and al-Bashir's backhand business is not giving him enough money to run the system. Slowly, Sudan life started becoming a nightmare, and in 2019, everything changed. All over the streets, people protesting for democracy in the nation against the dictator. And both forces, Rapid Support Force and the Sudanese Armed Force, tied a knot and overthrew the dictator Omar al-Bashir, sending him to prison and overtaking the government. It was end of 2019 and Omar al-Bashir's 30 years of rule has finished.
Reports say that Sudan's military has forced President Omar al-Bashir to step down, ending 30 years of rule.
Now in this story, major twist has yet to come. General Abdel Fattah al-Bashir became the head of the country, cooperating with Hemeti for power. They promised to hand over the country to the civilian hands for democracy and which government they chose to bring into power. But the promise was made, not delivered yet. And the civilians were very angry with General al-Burhan. This came to an end in December 2022. He decided to give the government in hand of a civilian with one condition, that RSF shall be a part of Sudanese armed force. And as expected, Hemeti didn't accept this condition, not having any choice rather than overthrow al-Burhan and rule the country by own self. Both forces started fighting with each other across the country's cities and capital Khartoum. Foreign governments started evacuating their civilian embassies shut. Airstrikes, gunfights started between both forces. Cities and their nearby parts started becoming bases and hiding places for both forces, and Sudan civilians not having any choice but to leave the country and enter into neighborhood countries like Chad, Egypt, South Sudan and Libya. This war started gaining a massive amount of interest among global leaders. Sudan is situated next to the Suez Canal, which is the Horn of Africa, and the Nile River is also present where Egypt is heavily dependent on the Nile River. Well, from the Suez Canal, 10 to 15% of trade passes through here, and mostly oil. It shows if any leader gets control of the canal, they can play with a global economy. That's why a lot of players started building their military bases and ports to keep an eye on activities. Sudan is also loaded with lots of resources like gold, iron, silver, graphite and copper. Because of all this, global leaders started solving this mystery of whom they should support and which forces can secure their future interests. In all this, UAE major player who supports Houthi. Houthi is securing the ports in Yemen on behalf of UAE, whereas Libya also supports Houthi because RSF fought for Libya when civilian unrest were going on in Libya. But Egypt seems neutral in this war because of their economic turbulence and they don't want direct tension with General Al-Burhan because they run the government right now. The same with Houthi because UAE gives a lot of aid to Egypt and Egypt doesn't want to lose aids. Our final player Russia is also in Sudan, not in a direct way but in the form of private military Wagner group, which provides arms and weapons to Houthi forces and trains their soldiers in exchange for gold. This game was previously played by Omar al-Bashir. Now the two generals fighting for each other in the same game in a new time. Where Sudan will hit in the future, no one knows, but one thing you know is to comment your review of this episode. Meet you in the next series. Till then.